Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Eternal. This is a death thrash band from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm very excited to talk about this band. So Emilio from Eternal actually reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in reviewing this album, our very first debut record called Cryptic Lust? We'll send you a vinyl. And I said, yes, please do. I always want to promote just smaller metal bands because I could talk about the big bands all day long, but smaller bands definitely need the attention too. So Emilio, thank you so much for sending this vinyl. I'm very, very excited to get into your debut Cryptic Lust today. I'm going to take y'all along with me to listen to it, but first I'm going to show you what this vinyl looks like. This is their debut album, and he did send me a sticker as well with the little album cover, and on the back he said, thank you for supporting Eternal. This is so sweet. Very nice, high quality sticker. Also, shout out to you, Surgical Brute, for the King Diamond concert t-shirt. It's got tour dates on the back. I'm so happy. It's so cool. This is probably the closest I'll get to seeing King Diamond live, but I'm hoping at some point I can see him. Anyway, off topic, but here's the insert, which I will show you. It's got all of the pictures of the people on there. And here's the back with all the lyrics. So Emilio Ortega is the vocalist and also plays guitar on this record. You also have Sophie Nabaud, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, on guitars and piano, it says on Metal Archives. Max Mahar on bass, and Xander Bridge on drums. I love the name Xander's Girl. Can we talk about the vinyl? Look how gorgeous that is. Tricolored, blue, white, black. I guess you could say it's quadruple color because there's a little bit of gray, but for the people that are just listening, it's white, blue, black, and gray, sort of. But yeah, I have no idea what to expect with this album. I'm very excited to get into it. Right off the bat, when I saw the album cover, I immediately thought of Entombed's Left Hand Path. I think that is like such a great art style, and I feel like it's mimicking that art style on Cryptic Lust. More information about this album is it is 12 songs and it comes in at 44 minutes long. So without further ado, I'm going to take you along with me. Let's go. All right, so we just finished Cryptic Lust from Eternal, and let's talk about it. Let's dive into it. I did take some notes, so if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes. Now, again, this is a death thrash band from Arizona, and I have to say the atmosphere of this album is very, very good. If you're a fan of Entombed, Skeletal Remains, Cannibal Corpse, or Obituary, you would really like what Eternal did on this record. There's a lot of, like I said, atmosphere. It's very much a record that is chock full of reverb. It gives you that kind of crypt vibe, cold, dank, smoky, foggy crypt, or like if you're in some sort of graveyard. It kind of reminds me of the graveyard scenes of like Nightbringer, that kind of thing. It's very much like Entombed's Left Hand Path in terms of that atmosphere and vibe. It's very, very cool how they were able to do that. So automatically my first impressions is it reminded me so much of Skeletal Remains and their most recent album that just came out, because I raved about how Skeletal Remains sounds so old school, and they really captured that old school death metal sound for being a modern band, and they're very, very promising. Granted, that was, Skeletal Remains' fifth record. So Eternal is in that same pocket. They really were able to grasp the best of that old school death metal sound outside of atmosphere. The guitar tone is very old school in its tone. It's kind of swampy, it's low, there's a lot of groovy parts here. Vocally, this record also reminds me a lot of Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse, a little bit of John Tardy, but not really. I feel like Mulder's lead singer had a lot more of that John Tardy Obituary style, but instrumentally you do get some of that like swampy vibe. But it is very classic death metal. Now, Death is listed as one of their bands that are very similar to them. I don't know if I necessarily heard that, maybe a little bit in the guitar tone, but for me, I feel like Death is a little bit higher and a little bit more techy, and maybe that's just because Sound of Perseverance is like my favorite record from them. But yeah, maybe a little bit of Chuck's vocals, but again, I think that he's a little bit higher in range. So definitely Emilio, I think, is more of a lower death metal vocalist, a little bit more gurgly, but not as gurgly as John Tardy from Obituary, but it's still there. Along with the atmosphere, this record does come with a couple instrumentals. The album does open up with church organs, which is one of my favorite ways to open up an album. It's very Midnight Priest, it's very Attic, it's very King Diamond, so it sets the stage for this kind of graveyard atmosphere, haunted house sort of thing. That's the vibe with church organs. Then you also have another instrumental that is a piano. It's called Dirge, and it's only 21 seconds, so I will say I felt like it was very short. I wanted a lot more with Dirge than what we got. It reminded me a lot of the piano instrumentals and interludes that were put throughout Crypta's second record, Shades of Sorrow, but where that was more of this like bright reverb grand piano sound, this was more of this kind of haunting piano. It was honestly, it was almost like they recorded the piano in some sort of haunted house or dusty house or something like that. So where it was less of like a studio piano sound, this was more of like this haunting piano track, and I really liked that. But because it was so short, I felt like it didn't really go anywhere, and it kind of just stopped. It just kind of ended, and then we went right back into the music. We went into the title track, which I did really enjoy. Cryptic Lust, like I said, the title track. I like the sound of the chorus. It reminded me a lot of Deicide. Anytime one of these death metal bands puts a lot of like ghoul noises or like demon noises, it reminds me a lot of Deicide's self-titled record. So you do get that kind of atmosphere here. They also had a sex track audio sample or something like that. And I was like, girl, so they had like the ghoul noises layered over this porn track audio of it's just a girl moaning, okay? It's just a girl moaning. You ain't hearing the dude. Maybe she's alone, we don't know, but you are hearing her enjoying the moment over, under these ghoul vocals. So, and I was like, girl, it's not even noon when I'm listening to this, but I'm here for it, I guess. So, I mean, I liked it. It's not the first time I've heard, you know, women moaning in a metal record, but I always feel like it adds a very interesting vibe to the tone of the record, especially depending on like what style of metal we're playing. If it's like, normally I hear it in like gore grind or grindcore records, so if it's definitely in gore grind and you're, you know, talking about gory stuff and then you've got her doing those things, it's, you know, so this was kind of almost like having sex with like a ghost or something. I don't know, it was that kind of vibe, but I did enjoy it. Other tracks that I really liked on this record were Guide Thy Hand. Again, a very old school death metal sound. Very Cannibal Corpse and Obituary. I thought the production and the mixing of this record overall was very good on my speakers. I really liked the track Torture Chapel as well. I thought the guitar tone was really great, and it opens up into this super groovy section where it's kind of like this halftime section. So you get this like solo, and then I think it breaks for a second, and then it gets into this halftime bridge, which sounds awesome. There's some cymbal rides in there too with loads of reverb on them. So instrumentally, like, there are pockets here where it's very groovy and it's just fun and a great listen to just throw on when you're doing, you know, something around the house or just chilling or whatever. Now, my one complaint for this record, I will say, is there's not a lot of instrumental diversity. I talk about this a lot on my channel, but there are good ways to kind of add different instrumentals into a record and layer it in your record to make it sound different. Each track to sound different. It's very easy for death metal especially to sound samey throughout the record. Also, she's chewing her bone, if you're hearing that. So Thorns of Regret is kind of where I feel like we started to taper off and the magic of the record kind of started to lose some of its shine. And it's not awful, it's not in a bad way, it just kind of, you know, you're like, okay, I know what this band sounds like, right? What's the next thing that's going to happen? So Thorns of Regret, I did like the church bell that was on there. Again, I'm super big into different instruments being used and different sounds and sound effects and stuff like that. So I'm obsessed with like movie samples, instrumentals, interludes, like all that stuff is absolutely up my alley. So I did like the church bell. I did feel like the lyrics almost didn't match what was on the booklet, but maybe I honestly don't know, because I was like looking at the lyrics and I was like, I don't know if he's singing what's actually on the page, because that has happened before. Deceased did the exact same thing with some of their songs, girl, okay? And I was like, King Fowley, okay? Whatever you're singing in this song is not what you put in your insert. I think in the best way, it's just the Cannibal Corpse effect. Conjuring the Void, it sounds very similar to Thorns of Regret. Cauldron of Entrails, I like that we were talking about witches, but again, it kind of has the same instrumental vibe as the previous two songs. So not a lot to report back on those. I thought that they were okay. I feel like it could have been, it's a little bit fillery, but I mean, you could also argue that like most of Cannibal Corpse's discography is filler if you really wanted to, because so many of their albums sound the same. But I also mentioned there too that there's small instrumental diversities between them. So yes, they kind of sound the same, but there's also these differences that you do notice. So that is really the only complaint I had. Again, biggest takeaway is Eternal really successfully captured the atmosphere of old school death metal. This absolutely sounds like a record that would come from like the early 90s. It's got so much reverb on it, and I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. So like I said, if you're a fan of Skeletal Remains' most recent album from 2024, I would give Eternal's Cryptic Lust a shot because they're very similar. They're within the same vein, although I will honestly say that Skeletal Remains' debut is stronger than this one. But it captures the same vibe, and that is what I think is the best part of this. Is again, I think there's so many modern death metal bands on this whole revival journey that are trying to do old school death metal, but they just miss the mark for me personally because they're trying to be very trendy. And honestly, Eternal and Skeletal Remains are just hitting the mark for me. They're capturing the best of Obituary and Cannibal Corpse, and Entombed is new. So Eternal, I think, that's what separates it from Skeletal Remains, is that they captured Entombed's vibe and atmosphere, whereas Skeletal Remains captured more Cannibal Corpse. And then Molder, their new release is also really good, captured more of that Obituary sound. So it's very interesting to kind of compare the three because they're all very new bands, but definitely I would say Eternal is the newer of the three because they came from 2021. So I'm very excited that we got to listen to this record. Thank you so much again, Eternal, for sending me Cryptic Lust. I do highly encourage you to form your own opinion and listen to this album on your own time, and you'll have to let me know what you think about it. What did you like about the record? Did you like the atmosphere? Did you walk away with any favorite tracks? Did you agree or disagree with the things that I said? I definitely think I'll be mentioning this album at the end of the year for my best and worst of the year of 2024. So be on the lookout for that. I'll also have a link down below where you can purchase this record and support Eternal a little bit more if you really enjoyed this album. So definitely go and do that. And yeah, I will see y'all in the next video. Bye, you guys.